everyone, my name is Jamie Fitzgerald and I'm the product lead here at Okta for Devices. Today, we're going to talk about phishing resistance, and how FastPass can help you defend against these types of attacks. Now, I'd like you guys to participate by asking questions in the chat, and later on, I'm going to have Chandra join us, who's one of our senior engineering managers, to talk a bit more about the details of how all this really comes together. We're going to talk about phishing, what it is, why it's prevalent, and why this has become a bigger problem than ever. Next, we're going to talk about FastPass all up, how it works, and how, again, it can help you prevent against all different types of phishing attacks, even some of the most advanced ones. And then from there, we're going to tell you where we're going. What's our roadmap, and where do we go from here? Phishing is really a technique that adversaries are trying to leverage to convince potential victims into sharing some sensitive information, like their credentials, or sending them money, or whatever other things that the bad guys are trying to do. But it all starts off by trying to trick someone into interacting with them. I want to walk you guys through kind of 3 examples that we're seeing very common. Number 1, something we call smishing or SMS phishing. This is where you get a text message and it says, click on this link to visit some site or take action. We see this very common right now, and people are really being successful. Adversaries are being quite successful with these types of attacks. Probably the most common type of phishing attempt that we see is email phishing. And even here, there's really kind of 2 formats. There's the spear phishing, which is a very targeted email that really convinces people to click on it because it looks very personalized, probably has some type of information that's going to make them think and trust it. The second is called whaling, which is where it's kind of spray and pray. You send it to everyone and you hope that out of the masses, you're going to get some types of folks that are interacting. And finally, there's catfishing or social engineering. This is where they're often trying to gather information or get you to trust them because they create these fake profiles and they try to interact with you in a social media type environment, because what they're trying to do is get you to trust them so that, again, they can convince you to share information you really shouldn't. So I want to walk through a real life example that we've been seeing a lot in the wild, and it starts with email. In this example, the adversary is really trying to convince the end user to interact with them by taking advantage of really the way we train our end users to try to do the right thing. In this example, the adversary sends an email that says, hey, something bad happened in your account. Perhaps you were phished. Perhaps you did do something bad. And oh no, it suggests that you should view the alert details and figure out exactly what happened. What happens from there is it brings you to a web page that the adversary has set up. In this attacker website, it looks identical to what your end users are used to signing into every day. It has the right logos. Oftentimes, it even has a URL that looks very common to what they normally log into, just maybe 1 letter off in some cases. From there, what happens? The user sees it, they feel comfortable, they're not alerted, so they interact with that page. They put in their password, they log in. And from there, the adversary got exactly what they wanted, which is credentials. This attack is unfortunately way too common right now. And once the adversary has access to, let's say, an end user's email, there's a lot of things that can happen. Number 1, they have access to corporate data, but also they can interact with many other people within your organization to try to get them to interact because the email is coming from a trusted source, an internal foe. This is a problem for our customers. This is a problem for Okta to help you try to solve. Really, we've seen a huge rise in phishing because of, I think, really 2 different reasons, and we have data to back this up. One is because of the pandemic, there's a lot more folks that are working from home and working remotely. That means that the traditional security stacks that help prevent phishing from being successful is not always in place. And second, there's tooling that's out there that has made it significantly easier for a low sophisticated adversary to really carry out a very sophisticated phishing attempt. We're going to walk through an example in a bit of a tool set called Evil Engine X, which is quite sophisticated in its attack, but only takes a couple of clicks from an adversary to actually set up and take advantage of. We're going to walk you through a demo of a successful phishing attempt. And as I mentioned, we're going to leverage this tool set called Evil Engine X. This is something that unfortunately is available in the wild today and is something that we've been seeing from a lot of our real life customers, and something that you've probably seen a lot in the news and the headlines being successful for adversaries. This attack framework is something we're calling adversary in the middle attack, where Evil Engine X creates essentially a proxy that runs and emulates the sign-in page with the Okta sign-in widget itself, so that when an end user tries to interact with that page, they feel right at home. It looks exactly like every other day when they're logging into an Okta-backed, an Okta-protected website, and so they log right in. But what's actually happening is they're not logging into that site. They're actually having all of their credentials passed to the real Okta website, unfortunately allowing the adversary to get the SSO token and allowing them to take advantage of those session cookies to do whatever they'd like within that organization, posing as that victim. So as I walk through this demo, I want to really talk about three personas. One is Raven. Raven is a threat actor, having a great time, leveraging the tool set, attacking folks. Adele. Now, in the example that I showed earlier, where that Microsoft example, sometimes folks get emails compromised. In this example, Adele's email was compromised, and so Raven starts sending emails from Adele to folks like Alex. And Alex, in this example, is going to be the target of this phishing email. And so we're going to walk you through this whole experience and show you exactly how, unfortunately, easy and convincing this phishing attempt can be. So let's jump into the demo. All right, now I'm going to show you guys a successful phishing attempt. We don't understand who the players are. Let's take a look at what this demo looks like. So from here, you're going to see on the left hand of your screen, this is Alex Wilbur's inbox. You can see that he's got an email from Adele. And on the right hand side, you can see that Raven, the adversary, has actually created this compromised URL, a fake URL, to try to convince Alex to click on and interact with. In this email example, again, they're trying to say, hey, something seems strange here, and it looks like they're getting an email that says, maybe something bad is taking place. You should report this suspicious activity. This convinced Alex to try to do the right thing by clicking on this link. Now, he's taken to an Okta sign-in page. He thinks, this is where I'm used to signing in. So he goes through his normal authentication flow. From here, he then says, I got to do MFA because that's what I normally have to do. Well, first I'm going to give you my password. As you can see, the whole time this is all taking place, everything's coming directly to Raven on the right-hand side. Once this text message had arrived, if they chose SMS, next thing you know, authentication was successful. Now, Alex may not have known anything happened. He's happy. He thinks, that's weird. I wonder why it took me to Okta.com. That's strange. But I just move on with the rest of my day. I tried to do the right thing. I've got other things to do. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side, well, all the information is there, and you can actually see that this is an active live session that Raven has stolen. He sees username, password, etc., and he also has this stolen session cookie, and they're off to the races. So now that we've seen a successful phishing attempt take place, I want to talk to you a bit about FastPass, how it works, and eventually we're going to walk you guys through how it can actually prevent these types of attacks from being successful. So what is FastPass? FastPass is an authenticator. FastPass is brought to you by the Okta Verify app, and many folks know this app and are quite familiar if you're a customer of Okta. Most people have been running it on their mobile devices for years for things like push authentication. What we've done is expanded the capabilities of this to have a new authenticator that we call FastPass. Now, there's some really important attributes of FastPass that I want to quickly walk you through. Number one, FastPass allows you to enforce NIST-defined and guideline-based phishing-resistant MFA flows. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that we have to provide a cryptographic binding between the authenticator and the user, period. Next, there can be no shared secrets or passwords or knowledge-based authentication that's taking place as part of that flow. We have to offer what we call origin binding and channel binding so that we understand where it's coming from and that we can validate that the source, that the actual site you're trying to log into is the true source that you're trying to authenticate with. And we must offer a high assurance authenticator. Many folks call that proof of possession. And FastPass is offering all of that. Beyond that, we also offer integrations with many different types of tools that might be very common in your security stack. Things like device management, your MDMs or UEM providers. We also have integrations with EDRs, and we'll talk more about that later. But what's really important is that it also has an amazing user experience that's completely passwordless and very, very smooth and frictionless, allowing the end user to actually enjoy the experience while you get all the benefits of this very high security and high assurance authentication flow. I'm going to hand it off to Chandra, and he's going to explain how we do that in a lot of depth. Chandra, take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. And hello, Oktane. I'm Chandra Shirshad, Senior Engineering Manager, responsible for Okta Verify and FastPass. Before you can authenticate using FastPass, you need to enroll your device into Okta FastPass. There are multiple ways to enroll into FastPass. Today, we are going to look at one of the most common use cases where Alex just received a laptop from his company that he just joined. He needs to install Okta Verify on his laptop, or maybe it's already installed by his administrator on that laptop that was shipped to him. He's going to fire up Okta Verify app and then click on Get Started. Alex will be asked to authenticate for the first time. Administrators may have given him a temporary password for one-time password or an email magic link with which he can authenticate. Administrators, to be more secure, may have set up SMS OTP as well. Alex gets the SMS OTP, puts it in, and authenticates. After that, the enrollment begins. During the enrollment process, all Alex has to do is provide biometrics on his MacBook Touch ID or on Windows Hello facial scanning. That's it. Alex is all set and enrollment is complete. Behind the scene, Okta FastPass creates a cryptographic key pair. It stores the private key locally in the trusted platform module of the device and sends the public key over to Okta, along with other information such as the device posture, device identifier, user details, and all of that is sent back to Okta. Okta stores all of that information and the public key securely and completes the enrollment process. Jamie mentioned about NIST guidelines of a strong phishing authenticator and what their characteristics are. As you can see, Okta FastPass creates strong public-private keys using ES256 or RS256 cryptographic algorithms backed by biometrics. Hence, we can say cryptographic binding between authenticator and user identity check. In addition to that, the private keys generated by FastPass never leave the device. They are in the trusted platform module and they cannot be tampered with or migrated to another device or taken out from the device. Hence, we can say high assurance proof of possession check. Let's see how authentication works with Okta FastPass. There are multiple ways that there are multiple methods of authentication that FastPass uses. But let's look into this one of the most common methods, which is called the loopback server method. In this method, Okta FastPass runs an HTTP server listening on a local port on the device for authentication requests. This diagram here shows how the loopback server authentication method works. Now, Alex just enrolled into FastPass. The first thing he wants to do is check his email. He goes to Gmail, which is what his company uses, and tries to authenticate. Gmail knows that Okta is the authenticator provider, so Gmail or the service provider redirects to Okta for authentication, as you can see in the number 1. Okta backend loads the Okta sign-in widget, which you all are familiar with. Along with that sign-in widget, it sends a challenge nonce. A challenge nonce is a unique identifier that is used for authentication. This unique identifier prevents the attackers from using this, what is called as a replay attack. Since it's a unique identifier that can be used only once, the nonce is going to help us prevent replay attacks. The browser now has the sign-in widget. The sign-in widget code runs and makes a call to the Okta FastPass that is running locally on the device. Makes a call to the HTTP server and requests authentication. After doing that, it begins polling the Okta backend for results. Now, Okta FastPass takes over and requests Alex to provide his biometrics. It could be Touch ID on the MacBook or Windows Hello on the Windows laptop. After that, Okta FastPass takes the biometrics, uses the private key that is stored in the trusted platform module, and signs the nonce. In addition to the nonce, it also takes the URL that is in the browser, which is also known as the origin domain. takes that origin domain, also signs it with the private key, and then takes the device context, which has already gathered, such as OS version. What is the OS version? What is the whether the disk is encrypted or not? Is there a password set? Is the laptop does the laptop have biometric protection such as Windows Hello or Touch ID? All of this information is also taken and signed with the private key. This response containing all of this information is sent to the Okta backend. Okta backend has the public key, verifies all of these things, checks the nonce, checks the origin domain and the device posture. It evaluates all of these things against the policy that administrator has set up. If the user and the device meets the criteria of the policy, the user gets access. Okta backend responds to the browser with a SAML assertion or OIDC access token, which the browser can take and go to the service provider, in this case Gmail, and Gmail says, yes, everything is fine, I got your token or the access assertion, and lets the user in, and Alex can access his Gmail. In addition to these things, we also have integrations with third party like CrowdStrike and Tanium. We can take those signals and send it back to Okta for evaluation, and this will add additional protection such as threats from other vectors such as malware or ransomware present on the device. Now let's look at the NIST one more time here. The NIST says we got to have origin binding and channel binding. As we can see in step 3 and 4, Okta FastPass checks the user biometrics and signs the origin header with the private key backed by biometric to make sure that it's guaranteed to have the origin binding is actually what it is. So this is verified, so we can check that box off. Now, as you can see in this entire flow, there are no passwords involved. There is no OTP involved. There is only cryptographic signatures going back and forth with verification. So we can check that last box, no shared secrets such as passwords or secret questions. Now that we understand how FastPass works, let's look into how it protects us from phishing attacks. Going back to the earlier example of AITM or the adversary in the middle attack that Jamie mentioned, let's see if Raven can be successful with the same attack using FastPass as authentication. Here, Raven is sitting in the middle, set up his bad side, evil side, using this evil Ginex proxy server. His site is called fakesite.com. Usually it is not going to be as obvious, but for example sake, we're going to use fakesite.com. Then Raven is going to lure Alex one more time to click on the fake site link. Poor Alex falls prey to the phishing attack one more time and clicks on the fake link and goes to the fake site. The fake site then proxies the request back to Okta, gets the sign-in widget, and presents it to Alex on his browser. The sign-in widget has the nonce that we talked about earlier, but we know what the sign-in widget is going to do next. The sign-in widget is going to make a call to the Okta FastPass on the local HTTP server and then asks for authentication and starts polling Okta backend for the results. Okta Verify also, we know what exactly it does. It collects the nonce, signs it, it takes the origin domain from the browser's URL header, takes that, signs it, and then it takes the device posture signals, signs them all, and puts them in a response and sends those signed response to Okta backend. Guess what? Okta is going to immediately notice that the origin header that came from the browser is different from the origin header that we captured during enrollment. It immediately fires a phishing alert back to Okta Verify on Alex's device about the suspicious activity. Jamie, can you show us a demo of this failed phishing attack, please?
Now we're going to show you that same demo that we saw in the past, but with FastPass in the middle, and how it can help prevent you from getting phished. First, you need to turn on this phishing resistant feature in your organization. You also need to make sure that Okta's FastPass widget is part of your sign-in widget. And finally, you need to make sure that the app sign-on policies include Okta Verify and FastPass. From here, what I also want to do is help you set up the ability to send those workflows that Chandra was talking about earlier. What we can do is quickly create a filter that allows us to detect if that FastPass phishing decline attempt had taken place so that you can use that downstream for workflows to alert the user or help improve your security all up. So we go back to our scenario. Alex on the left, Raven on the right. In this case, same exact email comes in and we're trying to convince Alex to interact. So Alex does. He does the same thing before. He clicks on the link and next thing you know, all right, what's going to happen? He's going to see the sign-in widget just like he saw in the past, but slightly different. In this case, FastPass is there. What happens is he clicks that link and FastPass didn't work. I wonder why. Well, we know why. We know that something bad happened and we are able to, as part of those workflows, send an email directly to Alex letting him know that this took place. FastPass doing its job and letting folks know. Now that we've seen this demo and we've actually shown you how FastPass can actually defeat this adversary in the middle of attack, we can now see how important Okta Verify and FastPass can be as part of your overall security story. And if that's the case, we think it's really important to make sure that we're helping secure Okta Verify itself. And to do that, I'd really like to have Chandra again come in and explain exactly how we're doing that to make sure that Okta Verify is not compromised, since it's such an important part of your security story going forward.
It's common for companies to have endpoint management or EDR, endpoint detection and response solutions for their desktop environment. When they roll out their desktop devices, these endpoint management software is already loaded on them, and they can control those devices, monitor those devices, make sure that there is no malware or ransomware installed on them, so on and so forth. They have more control over those desktop devices. However, many companies allow their employees to use their personal mobile devices, also known as BYOD. But they do not have similar MDM or mobile device management solution rolled out to manage or control those devices. And also, many employees don't prefer their personal devices to be managed. BYOD devices pose a huge security risk to enterprises today. Okta is committed to securely connecting any person on any device to any app. To that end, we have invested heavily in securing and hardening our mobile apps. Here are some ways we are making it extremely hard for attackers to mess with our mobile apps. Bad actors can exploit our apps through reverse engineering, understanding the code, and planning their other attacks. We deter and confuse these attackers by obfuscating our code, inserting honeypots, and implementing the other deceptive code patterns. Jailbroken or rooted devices pose huge security threat as well, since these activities give full access to the operating system on those devices. Users may inadvertently enable or disable a feature or a functionality that attackers could leverage, and it would lead to a disastrous consequences. Our mobile apps detect and report jailbroken and rooted devices back to the administrators, who can create appropriate policies to prevent such devices from accessing company resources. Tampering is another process of manipulating mobile apps, either compiled app or during runtime. They can attach these tools such as Frida and tamper with our execution path of our mobile apps. Okta Verify detects such tampering and prevents the attackers from exploring our app's memory space or runtime paths. Now, back to Jamie, who is going to talk to us about why you should be embracing Okta FastPass and a little bit more about the future of FastPass.
But let's summarize. Number one, why FastPass is important is it offers a passwordless login experience. It's seamless. Your users are going to actually embrace it because it's so simple. But what's great about it is it also offers a very high security bar. It enforces phishing resistance and, again, helps stop some of these advanced phishing attacks that we're seeing. From here, we offer a consistent user experience across all browsers, platforms, devices. Why that's important is it allows you to have a consistent experience from your users that are using Windows, Mac, iOS, Android. You roll that out once. It's easier to debug. It's easier to communicate with your end user community in a world where most of the time you have a hybrid type of OS environment. And we offer enhanced visibility of security posture. locally with what Okta Verify can offer, as Chandra walked through earlier, but also some deep integrations that we have with EDR and XDR vendors and SIMs and others. So we think these are all really, really important reasons why FastPass is going to be a great choice for you in your environment. That said, we also think it's important that you understand that we are neutral and independent, and we want to embrace all possible ways that you can secure your organization. So I want to talk to you a bit about WebAuthn. WebAuthn is another NIST-defined phishing resistant factor and can be very useful in many different use cases. But I wanted to compare and contrast a little bit about the way that WebAuthn works versus the way that FastPass works. WebAuthn does offer the phishing resistant factors. However, it does not offer device context. That is something that is going to be unique for FastPass. We understand the device itself, all the different security postures, and we pass that to Okta so that you can actually use it as part of your sign-in policy. The same thing's true with third-party signals. CrowdStrike, Tanium, as we mentioned before, can now be used. Those signals can be used as part of your authentication flow itself. Phishing resistant, device context, third-party device context, and security posture are all really important parts of this story. And finally, we're offering the ability to understand and know when you're under attack. We're able to detect that a phishing attempt took place and create a system log that you can actually take advantage of with your downstream SOC and security teams, and let the user know directly that something took place and that they need to be aware and be secure. This can be really critical if you're being attacked at a large scale. The sooner you know and the sooner you have actionable information that something bad is happening, the sooner you can protect your organization all up. So again, we think it's important for you to have the capabilities to use WebAuthn when required. In some cases, folks want to have roaming authenticators like YubiKeys. Absolutely makes sense, and we support all of that. But we wanted to make sure that you also understand why we're so excited about FastPass and what it can bring to you and some of the differentiation that it offers. But guess what? We're not done. There's a lot more to do, and it seems like we want to make sure that you understand why FastPass is going to be a great choice for you going forward. So first things first, all the things that we talked about in terms of FastPass phishing resistance is available in EA today. We're really excited to say that. We support all managed devices and all authentication flows on those managed devices. There are a few flows that we do not support in unmanaged devices. Many of the times that this is true is because of the fact that those operating systems require you to be managed for them to offer some of those phishing resistant flows. Some of that channel binding and origin binding is only available in a managed device, specifically with iOS and macOS. From here, in GA, we're looking to offer, again, more visibility into our system logs, adding more context in those logs. Things like understanding the URL itself and the IP it came from will be part of those system logs. So you have, again, more actionable information. We're going to make it easier for you to leverage workflows. We're going to create templates so that you can just immediately click and roll out those workflows. So when a phishing attempt takes place, you get a system log, you'll be able to take different workflow actions directly off of that, and we're going to make that templatized so it's very simple for you to put into action. Also, making sure that we enhance those user notifications so that, again, an end user knows when something bad happened. All of that we plan to do next quarter, which we call Q4 here at Okta. And from here, finally, as we move forward, after Q4, as we go into post-GA, we think that we're going to continue to invest in these unmanaged devices, specifically iOS and macOS, working to make sure that if we have any possible way to offer you those BYOD, fully phishing resistant flows, we want to bring that to you. And we're working in partnership with those OSs to try to bring that to you. And finally, we want to improve the way that phishing resistant activation takes place after you enroll your first factor. This is, again, something where we want to make sure that you're secure from the day you enroll until you're and operationally as you get new devices and the full life cycle of managing this takes place. Hopefully you guys understand now why we're so excited about FastPass and how it can help you prevent some of the most advanced phishing techniques that are out there. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.